Hello, pricing friends. This is Sebastian speaking, and thanks once more for joining our series Pricing in 10 Minutes. Today, I'd like to speak about validation techniques in pricing. So, very often you design a new pricing of different kinds, price improvement program, pricing for new customers, whatsoever, but you obviously need some feedback from different sources to better validate and fine tune your pricing. And this session is about what you can do and should do. So, what are the different pricing aspects that you might need to validate? The first thing is you are launching a new pricing, for example, for a new customer segment or your first product at all. And before you go all in, it's definitely worth checking out customer feedback and other validation techniques. Secondly, changing a price model is usually very crucial. Thirdly, a price change, a price improvement program, for example. And lastly, a market expansion, for example, to a new segment or to a new country. We've seen many fails from big companies, also in pricing, when they may not perfectly validate their new models. That's why I'm showing you a few examples how to do it. There are many ways, right? This is a full slide, and we're not showing all of them today, but you can see that it goes from market research techniques like online surveys, in-depth customer interviews, focus groups, experiments, to all kind of data analysis, which is usually a little less validating and a bit more in the project earlier on already. You can also do internal interviews, talk to experts, workshops again, do some business cases, and so on. So there are a lot of validation techniques, but the focus is here rather on the left-hand side, which comes usually after the concept phase. There are some, let's say, reasons when you should validate and when maybe you should not validate. Validating obviously should be done if the product, the new pricing has strategic relevance, if the business impact is high, if the time horizon, is shortly, so you have to implement it in short time, if decision making should be more data-based than concept-based, if you cannot reverse your pricing afterwards and iterate it, and if your risk appetite is obviously lower, because that's in ensuring validation always helps in reducing risks. Here again, the different validation methods that you see. There are some qualitative ones, there are some quantitative ones. I don't go through all of them, but they start with interviews, they have internal workshops, you can go into customer interviews, focus groups. Quantitative are a little bit more usually online surveys, mystery shopping, scorecards, and so on. They have different costs. Interviews are usually a little bit cheaper. If you go for large-scale surveys, it's usually a little bit more expensive. The other way around, when you speak with people and you get hold of them for half an hour, 45 minutes in an interview, well, the feedback is still qualitative. You usually can only interview a few customers, prospects, leads, or whomever, while in large-scale surveys, you get often hundreds of respondents here. Speed of delivery is a criterion. Again, here interviews are a bit faster than, for example, A/B tests that you need to run for many months. And the validity also differs depending on what you want to get out of it. The more people you ask, the longer a study runs, the more valid it is, the less risky in the end your implementation. I go through a few examples now. The first one is internal stakeholder interviews. It often comes already in a, let's say, concept phase, because you must not, let's say, conceptualize a new pricing without asking anyone. But nevertheless, even when you have a pricing prototype, it's definitely worth it asking internal stakeholders, usually from sales, product, tech, marketing, for feedback to get a better understanding, but it's more like a sanity check afterwards. The, let's say, second validation technique are customer interviews. They can come a little bit earlier in a pricing project, more as an explorative approach, but it's definitely worth it talking to customers again at the end of a journey. So before you go into implementation, you have your concept, your pricing prototype ready. It's very often data-driven and conceptualized by internal project teams, and then you check them with customers, prospects, and leads. And usually we conduct between, let's say, 6 and 8 of such interviews, sometimes a bit more if there are more products, more customer segments. And very often it's like a half an hour interview where you ask them about their usage, first about their key purchase criteria, and then also about certain product topics, the ones that you want to investigate. A third option is benchmarking. So if you have your concept, that you check it with competitors, if the prices are on their website or if you have them somewhere elsewhere, you will, that's pretty easy. If you don't have them, a mystery shopping may be an approach, so that you're making up a phantom story and then ask for different quotes. It helps very often to get these results, because then you can compare your pricing against competition. You very often get some new ideas, some new opportunities to tweak it, and then you have a very good benchmark, obviously. Fourth category is the market research. We mainly mean by that online surveys. Of course, you can do focus groups, you can do old school telephone interviews, but I guess online surveys are the, let's say, most cost efficient way to go. Here you need to obviously plan in some budget for external market agency costs, but here you can very often test a lot of hypotheses, prototypes, and pricing questions. Question blocks we very often ask are usage habits, decision criteria, market and value proposition of our client that we are working for. Then we test the structural model changes. We may even show the pricing prototype that we have built. We test willingness to pay, direct or indirect questions. You may know the Van Westendorp or Garbo-Granger technique. And of course, we're asking also for different consumer or customer information so that we can segment them afterwards. What you get out of it is, for example, purchasing criteria by importance. You can see the performance on different criteria of your company against competitors, where you're better, where you're worse. You can put it on a matrix of competitive advantages to see where you overperform on important topics, where you underperform, what are your strong competitive advantages and disadvantages, and in an aggregating way, you put it on a value map here on the lower right, where you see overall where you are overperforming on value for money or underperforming against the different competitors in the market. And the questions on pricing that we often ask is the price importance. So do they actually know pricing, and do they care that much about pricing, or are other things more important? We ask Van Westendorp, so is a future price, so when is a future price too cheap, fair, expensive, too expensive, to understand where the thresholds are. We can test different thresholds directly in a Garbo-Granger method, where we ask for willingness to pay or buying intent for specific price points. I've mentioned already price knowledge and also price increase knowledge. So do they know when the last price increase happened and what magnitude it had? In a Van Westendorp analysis, you can see what the perfect price corridor is, and also when the price perception is kind of turning from being value for money into too expensive. You can also conduct a conjoint analysis that kind of looks like this, where you are showing different options. The options have different attributes, they have different features here, and then in roundabout 6 to 12 screens, it depends on the complexity of the product, you're showing different combinations. The customer chooses which one they would like more, and this way you can put a value and money tag on each of the features and then combine your offering into a package at the best possible price. You can also run A/B tests. That's a bit an extra method, takes a bit longer, but I mean, it's super valid. You can put on your website the new pricing, maybe 50-50, old pricing, new pricing, or different price levels, different price models, different metrics, to see how the take rates are, how the customer lifetime is, and so on, to understand how it works in reality. Takes a bit longer, it's a bit more complicated, but if done, has the highest possible validity. If you want to run a B test, here's a quick guideline and some recommendations how to do that. On the right hand side, you just see an example, 2 different price points, 2 different offerings, and then you check what's happening and decide afterwards for the winner. So in a summary, there are 4 steps that you should go along if you want to do a price validation. The first one is you need to decide what needs to be validated. Then you should decide, is it important enough kind of to be validated, because it's extra cost, of course. Then the third is, how do you do that with all the methods I just showed? And then the last step, I skipped that, but it's basically, do you do that by yourself? Do you need a market research agency? Do you need some consultants like us? And then overall, we can help you taking the risk out of pricing decisions. That's it for now. If you want to learn more about pricing, feel free to get in touch with me, write me an email, or tune in to our Pricing Friends podcast. And I hope we speak soon or see you soon in another video.